Well, hello everyone and welcome to a brand new video, and this could be my review of Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. Now, Mission Impossible 7 is once again directed by Christopher McQuarrie and stars Tom Cruise, Rebecca Ferguson, Ving Rhames, Simon Pegg, as well as some new cast members like Haley Atwell, Esai Morales, and Pom Klementieff. The story is pretty simple as always, but Ethan Hunt and the IMF have to track down a weapon before it falls into the wrong hands. I just want to start off by saying that the last installment, Mission Impossible Fallout, is not only one of the best action films of all time, but it's literally one of my favorite movies of all time. And even Rogue Nation, I think it gets better with every rewatch. So of course the hype for Dead Reckoning Part 1 is huge, and of course with last year's success with Top Gun Maverick being my favorite movie of 2022, yeah, the hype was pretty big for this one. And look, I know this movie is getting rave reviews, like overwhelmingly positive, everybody loves it. And from an action movie standpoint, this is a masterpiece, this is amazing. But I will say that in terms of storyline and character work, this is kind of a bit of a step down, I must say. Now let me get this straight out of the way. The returning cast members are all great. Tom Cruise, what more can I say about Tom Cruise? He's doing all these death-defying stunts at 61 years old. Well, he was 58 when he did this movie, but still, I was on the edge of my seat during every single stunt that Tom Cruise is actually doing for real. Rebecca Ferguson, Ving Rhames, and Simon Pegg are also back, and they're all great, but I will say that all three of them are getting less screen time than the previous installments, and that's because they're introducing the new characters or giving them more screen time. And that's one of my little issues that I have with this movie. We didn't get much of the IMF in this movie. The classic dynamic between all of them and their interactions, we didn't get much of that. Even Rebecca Ferguson barely has any lines in this movie. A lot of the times, she's barely in the movie anyway, but even in the scenes that she's in, she barely says anything. And I don't know if that has something to do with the plot or what's gonna happen in part 2, but yeah, like the IMF, they're barely like having any screen time in this movie. So yeah, even at 2 hours and 43 minutes, you can feel that something is definitely missing from this movie that we had in previous Mission Impossible films. So basically this film is focusing more on the new characters, and one of them is Haley Atwell, who plays Grace, a pickpocket thief. And she is a standout. She is really good in this film. Although I will say one thing about her character, but there are lots of unanswered questions regarding her past and why she's so important in this movie. Like, you don't really know why she's that important and like why we need her. You know, and maybe this is something that's going to be answered in part 2, but as a standalone film, I don't really know anything about her character other than the fact that she has good chemistry with Tom Cruise. And I could also say the same thing about our villain played by Esai Morales. And it's revealed through flashbacks that he was part of Ethan's past. And just like Haley Atwell's character, there is not much to know about Esai Morales' past. Like, he's just this guy that we saw through a flashback for like 2 seconds, and he's supposed to be this imposing, threatening person, but he never comes off that way. And throughout the entire movie, you're left wondering, why is he so important to Ethan? You know, like, there's so many unanswered questions. And I know this is a part 1, but at the same time, as a standalone film, like, you just literally know nothing about him. Like, maybe just a bit, but not really. And because of that, I had trouble believing in his cause and in motivations for being the villain of this movie. But we'll see what happens in part 2. To be honest, out of all the new characters, I think Pom Klementieff might be my favorite. She plays kind of like a silent henchman who's like very strong and imposing. Like, you know, in those action movies where you always have this henchman who doesn't speak or say a word? Well, Pom Klementieff is that character in this movie. She's the type of character where we don't really need to know much about. Like, it's really from her acting, her facial expressions, her presence. That's what I love about her character. That was amazing. Now let's talk about the action sequences, because they are big, they're exciting, they are thrilling. There's even a train sequence at the end of the film that kind of reminded me of The Lost World. And during that scene, I'm not gonna lie, my hands were like this, like they were closed. I would even go as far to say that my favorite action stunt in this movie is not even the bike jump that's being promoted in all the trailers and stuff, but there is this really cool fight scene happening in a tight alleyway, very small, tight, compact alleyway. It makes you feel so claustrophobic. And yeah, Pom Klementieff versus Tom Cruise in that small alleyway, that was really good. But unfortunately, like I said at the beginning of the review, where it falls short is really the storytelling and some of the character choices they make in this film. And as a standalone film, there are some things that they do that I'm not really on board with. So let me explain. So basically, I really loved the first half of this movie. I thought it was very thrilling, intense. But in the middle of the movie, something happens to one of our characters, and because of what happened to that specific character. I'm not going to spoil, but it really does affect the rest of the movie when that moment happened. And I don't mean that in the good way. What they did with one of the characters left me kind of underwhelmed and sad for the rest of the movie, because the film didn't really give me time to process what just happened, because it's so like fast-paced, you know, it's a Mission Impossible movie. For the rest of the film, you feel like something is missing. Something feels off, like it's not right. And as exciting as that bike jump scene is, I was still thinking about that character choice they made in the middle of the movie. Unfortunately, it really made me care less about the mission and what they were after, and the villain's motivation, which is not even clear to begin with. Do you remember in previous Mission Impossible movies, there was always that moment where it was like smart and clever, and you were all like connecting the dots, and you were like, you were doing that sort of feeling of like, it was like a puzzle, and you were trying to solve this puzzle throughout the movie, and then you're left satisfied when it's resolved. But in this movie, you never really get a moment to really feel like something is clever or smart. Everything is just like about the action and some of the side stuff. Like I said, storytelling wise, not that great for me. But like it says in the title, this is a part 1, and we'll see how it goes in part 2 when the film all comes together with all of our unanswered questions, But as a Mission Impossible film, as a standalone film, this film falls short compared to Fallout, Rogue Nation, Ghost Protocol, maybe even Mission Impossible 3. Yeah, I'll have to think about that. I'm definitely going to do a spoiler video because I really want to talk about what really bothered me about this film, but I can't. Overall, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 is a fun, thrilling action film. The bike jump scene, Tom Cruise driving through the streets of Rome with one hand. Haley Atwell is a wonderful addition to the cast. Not a big fan of what they do with the villain, but I'll reserve my judgment until Part 2 comes out. I really wish we got more of the team dynamic, but it's being cut short, even if this movie is running at 2 hours and 43 minutes. But where it falls short for me is really some of the storytelling and the character choices they chose to do in the middle of this movie. And with that, I'm still gonna give Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 an 8 out of 10. I could have given this movie a 7, but I'm gonna give it an 8 because from an action movie standpoint, this is awesome. Like, I'm an action movie junkie. I love action. I love when action is done right and being done for real. Like, I have mad respect for Tom Cruise and the entire crew for pulling this off. The action is also well shot and thrilling, but in terms of story, it's definitely one of the weakest in the franchise. So what did you think of Mission Impossible 7? Let me know in the comments, like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one.